So I'm looking at the bitfarms.com website, and I see that Bitfarms, as of the last update to this website, and this is like the front page of the site, um, we're looking at a company here with an efficiency of 21 watts per terahash, which I think is remarkable considering that CleanSpark, whose website I'm also at as of October 31st, 2024, CleanSpark's stated efficiency is about 20.89, let's call it watts per terahash. Joules, watts, let's just keep it simple. They're just about the same thing. Not quite the same, but just about the same thing. So let's just call it watts. I mean, I'm looking at Bitfarms having essentially the same level of efficiency as CleanSpark, and CleanSpark has over 30 exahash, right, based on what I'm seeing on their website, right, of deployed mining capacity, whereas by contrast, Bitfarms only has about, say, 12 exahash of, operational online Bitcoin mining capacity. So I don't think that Bitfarms is going to become less efficient, even though, yes, with the Stronghold Digital Mining acquisition, right, Stronghold's average efficiency, if you want to call it that, is roughly 32 watts per terahash. But bear in mind, the overwhelming majority of those Bitcoin mining machines are going to be phased out, and, state-of-the-art, radically more efficient machines are going to be put into the data centers. In fact, that's already happening, right? There are approximately, let's call it roughly 10,000 T21 Bitmain Bitcoin mining machines that are going to be co-located over at Scrubgrass, and then approximately 10,000 T21 Bitmain Bitcoin mining machines that are going to be co-located over at Panther Creek. And so, I think that's about as least efficient as it's going to get insofar as any new machines that are going in there, right? Because obviously, as time goes on, you just need to get more and more efficient with your operations. So I'm just very, very impressed that as this broadcast is being created, and not being entirely sure when this was last updated, I haven't dug in super deeply yet into Bitfarms' financial statements. I will, and I'll get all the details, and I'll come up to speed with everything having to do with Bitfarms, because it's a fascinating story, by the way. Just what little I already know, I'm so incredibly impressed. I'm so incredibly intrigued by this company, really. And I think it's phenomenal that, again, just, it's sort of hard to make these comparisons sometimes, because every company, every Bitcoin mining company is a little bit different. But I think we can agree that, hey, if the business of each of these publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies is presumably to mine Bitcoin, the efficiency of the machines, whatever those machines happen to be, the efficiency of those machines, I think, is a good comparison point. Because I think it gives us a really decent sense then of like, hey, who are the more efficient Bitcoin miners out there, and who are some of the not so efficient Bitcoin miners out there. And although it's true that I haven't ever really been deeply immersed in the world of CleanSpark, from what I have read, they are, if nothing else, something of a standard bearer insofar as efficiency. I don't think I've ever read anybody say, hey, CleanSpark is a not so efficient Bitcoin mining company. If anything, I've read they are the most efficient Bitcoin mining company out there. And it's true, at least insofar as what I'm seeing. Hey, if they're at 20.89 as of October 31st, 2024, and certainly if Bitfarms is at 21, yes, CleanSpark is a bit more efficient. And again, I can't speak to other Bitcoin mining companies, but I'm just pointing this out, right? That if CleanSpark is something of a company that, hey, the industry looks up to insofar as efficiency, then I think the industry may be somewhat pleasantly surprised to discover that there's yet another publicly traded Bitcoin mining company that, although does not quite have the amount, right, of Bitcoin mining machines deployed, it's not comparable, right, to compare Bitfarms, at least not right now, with CleanSpark in terms of like the total number of deployed machines. But at least insofar as what's being published on the bitfarms.com website, to me, they are both equally extremely, extremely efficient insofar as their mining infrastructure. And with someone like Ben, who, if I'm not mistaken, had previously been Bitfarms' chief mining officer, you've got now somebody leading this company who's not really leading the company from the perspective of, hey, I'm coming from the marketing department, or I'm coming from the accounting department, or from the corporate finance department. I'm coming from the trenches of figuring out how to run the most incredibly efficient Bitcoin mining operation that there is to be found, right? So that set of skills, right? That focus, that understanding, that native intuitive understanding of the business, I think is ideally suited for the role of CEO. Now, granted, sure, when you're a CEO, there's a lot of other things you need to deal with. That's to be understood, right? Yes. But I think if the native quality that somebody's going to bring to the top job at a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company, right? If the core competency is to be anything, I'd rather it be, hey, my core competency is in Bitcoin mining. Because, stuff like corporate finance and marketing, or, any of these other incredibly important, not to be diminished, incredibly important functions, you can find people that are incredibly qualified, right, to help run those departments, which makes perfect sense to me. But when it comes to the actual job of really making sometimes life or death decisions as to the direction of the company, I think it's really, really incredibly important that the person making those decisions has that intuitive understanding of the Bitcoin mining economics, and has been in the trenches and understands, really how this business operates. I think that's incredibly unique. And I think that's something that makes Bitfarms, from my perspective at least, a little bit different perhaps than some of the other companies that are out there. So I'm incredibly encouraged by what I'm seeing. And I certainly hope that you're encouraged as well. I do want to briefly mention that the state of Pennsylvania, the state that I happen to be in right now, there's a proposal to utilize approximately $7 billion of state funds and to use that money to basically start a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Okay, for lack of a clearer way to describe it. Now, this is making some headlines, and it's certainly a very, very, very exciting and interesting piece of news. Now, from what I have read, it's not that all $7 billion will just be sunk immediately into buying Bitcoin in the spot market, but rather maybe a portion of those funds will be used, and presumably the route, right, or the avenue taken to acquire the Bitcoin will simply be to basically invest in one of the many publicly traded ETFs that are out there. So we will see what happens, but certainly this is a very interesting and potentially very promising development, here in my home state of Pennsylvania. I think there are still some hurdles that need to be overcome before this comes to pass. But certainly if it were to happen, I think other states may certainly follow. And it's not inconceivable that Uncle Sam, right, which is the colloquial term for the U.S. federal government, may potentially one day decide, you know what, we're going to start allocating a portion of our money, so to speak, to purchasing Bitcoin. I sort of laugh and smile when I say our money. We do have a Secretary of the Treasury. I sometimes jokingly think, maybe it should just be called the Secretary of the Debt, because needless to say, the United States does have quite a bit of debt, right? And, neither here nor there for this conversation. But with all of that said, I'm going to be doing you're just digging deeper into Bitfarms. As I said, I already started that process. I'm very, very encouraged by everything that I'm seeing. I really am. And I'm very impressed, incredibly impressed by what I've seen so far. One other little random side note that I want to share, because this is something that we talked about quite a bit, and I shouldn't call it a random side note. It's really not that random. It's quite relevant to Stronghold Digital Mining. So I think it was around December 13th of 2023, last year. Stronghold hosted a carbon capture event in which a lot of details were shared with the public about a carbon capture pilot program, which had been launched at Scrubgrass, which is the Western Pennsylvania mine waste to energy facility. And at the time, right, some of the preliminary test results were incredibly encouraging, like really, really encouraging. And those test results continue to be encouraging. So that prompted Stronghold Digital Mining, as you may know, right, to apply to Puro Earth to be certified. In other words, for this project to be certified pursuant to the Puro Earth standard. Upon receiving that certification, it would basically mean that carbon capture credits that Stronghold Digital Mining would be generating as a result of its carbon capture operations could then be sold, and revenue could be generated for the company, while at the same time, we're doing good by the environment. So, Puro Earth rejected, for lack of a nicer way to phrase it, right? Rejected Stronghold's application. It seems as if though the reason, although I'm not reading a letter issued by Puro as I share this with you, but the reason appears to be that because the carbon capture material is the byproduct of what Puro Earth is classifying as, I guess, like a thermal coal power plant, that's incongruent with what they're seeking to certify. Now, I think a strong argument could be made that these are not traditional thermal coal-fired power plants. These are purpose-built facilities, right, that transform mine waste into energy, specifically so that, right, Pennsylvania could be, hopefully one day, rid of acid mine drainage and a variety of other problems that stem from these incredibly toxic, carcinogenic coal piles. And the word pile is a bit of a misnomer. These are like mountains, right? We're talking about a lot of this stuff. So, so a natural question is, well, hey, wait a minute. Does this throw the Bitfarms acquisition of Stronghold into question now? Well, the good news is, as I recall from the conference call that was held with, Bitfarms and Stronghold at the time the announcement was made on or about August 21st of this year, the potential to capture carbon and sell carbon capture credits, none of that was actually part of the underwriting process for the deal. So the deal that was structured basically assumed that there would be no carbon capture opportunities whatsoever. Now, the reality is that we know how to capture at least a fair amount of the carbon that, right, would otherwise, let me rephrase that. We know that our, what I would call beneficial use ash, right, already natively has the potential to capture carbon. And it's doing it, right? There were two carbolith devices at Scrubgrass actually doing this. The question is, will Bitfarms want to continue doing this and attempt to find another mechanism through which to monetize this? Or is it the kind of thing where, hey, Bitfarms is going to say, you know what, look, we want to just focus on pulling in as much electricity as we can, right, from the grid. We're going to build out massive data centers at Scrubgrass, massive data centers at Panther Creek. Hey, this carbon capture stuff, it's interesting, but you know what? Hey, there's a limited amount of space. We just want to focus on building data centers. I'm not sure. We're going to have to see how this plays out. But I'd be remiss if I didn't share that with you, because I know that we spent so much time and just so much energy really kind of getting excited about the potential for carbon capture to be we know that the carbon capture works and we know that it's a reality. It's not a possibility. It's really more a matter of like, hey, will this one certification, agency, if you want to call it that, will they sort of give us the blessing needed to sell, right, these Puro Earth certified carbon capture credits? That's not going to be in the cards. Hey, are there some other certification bodies out there that could potentially be an avenue to pursue? Are there just private buyers that don't necessarily need Puro Earth to put their stamp of approval on this? The buyer's like, hey, no, we understand what you're doing. We love what you're doing. Hey, we want to help support that project, and they could do so. is the potential there for those Q45 tax credits? These are all things that are going to have to clearly be, decided by Bitfarms as to, hey, do we want to really pursue this anymore or not? Do we want to just focus on, core operations of like Bitcoin mining? I'll tell you, I think there's an argument to be made that it doesn't hurt to look into it a little bit further. But depending on how things play out from an infrastructure perspective, there's only so much space, right? And I think the path of potential least resistance is to just build out more data centers and focus on Bitcoin mining and not so much on carbon capture. So that's where we are with regard to that. Okay, my friend, it's been an eventful week. So let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again next week.